Mother Nature has been kicking the crap out of this planet lately. Earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes, and tornadoes. Many people attribute these disasters to global warming, but some people claim that something else may be going on, that many of these disasters may have been caused by human manipulation. One of the methods of manipulation is something called chemtrails. What are chemtrails? There are people that believe that the cloud-like trails you see in the sky behind jets are actually the government spraying evil chemicals. Before I get into how chemtrails supposedly control the weather, I need to find out if there's any truth to chemicals being sprayed. I'm going to look into this by talking to Kristen Megan, a whistleblower who was formerly with the U.S. Air Force, and she claims that she's seen evidence that shows that this is exactly what's happening. Tell us about your experiences with chemtrails when you were with the Air Force.
Part of my job was to approve hazardous materials that were acquired on base. I started seeing large quantities of strontium, barium, and aluminum. This material came too frequent, too much, with no contractor name. This didn't make sense to me.
Did you ask anyone what all those chemicals are for?
I asked a couple of people that were my equal rank that I felt I could confide in, but it was more of the shut up and color, let's not question it. So I started to see memos come down saying, disregard certain things that are called chemtrails, it's just a theory. We're working on weather items here, weather studies. I realized this is the perfect setup. Basically, aircraft from all over the Air Force gets taken to this base and gets dismantled down to the last screw, put back together, and before the paint is put on, you have white aircraft with no markings flying around. So to me, all the pieces fell into place.
Is that a chemtrail?
No, that's not a chemtrail.
That's a contrail?
It's a contrail.
What is the difference between a contrail and a chemtrail? Contrails, they say, are the natural streams that occur behind jets that dissipate quickly, whereas chemtrails, they stay in the sky and become clouds. Now, has anybody identified one of these cargo aircrafts and found chemical containers inside? Has anybody found some sort of a distribution method, a spray nozzle, some sort of evidence to indicate that they're spraying things from planes?
It's very controlled. You cannot go on a flight line and take pictures. If you do, you will be on the ground with an M16 in your back.
I enjoyed talking to Kristen, but she's making some crazy claims. I believe that she saw those chemicals, but in my opinion, there's a gigantic leap between knowing these chemicals exist and proving that the government is spraying them from the skies. But if they are spraying them, how does it control the weather? Now, I have to admit that I am very skeptical when it comes to the idea of chemtrails, but if there's a man that's going to convince me, it's Michael Murphy. Michael is the go-to guy when it comes to chemtrails. He's made 2 documentaries on them. They've been seen by over 2 million people, and he claims that he has evidence that's going to convince me that chemtrails are real and that the government is using them to manipulate weather. Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me. So you believe that all these crisscrossing patterns in the sky, these are government planes that are spraying something that's trying to control the weather. It's been kept a secret from the American public. The pilots have kept their mouths shut, although they've flown thousands and thousands and thousands of flights, and that what they're doing is they're controlling the weather.
We proved it, and in the last film, yeah, there's no question about it. Some days we get very few trails, but there are trails. Other days we get a complete canopy. We noticed that those were the days that occurred right before major storms came in. And that's when we contacted meteorologists and started looking at, is there a connection between chemtrails and the weather? Every scientist said without question, you could build a cloud and create a storm front.
Does this make any sense? If you can build a storm front, can you manipulate the weather? Is there any proof?
When people have a difficult time grasping, I say, look at the weather.
Have you ever uncovered any evidence where you have direct government documentation?
They used it in a program called Project Popeye, where the U.S. government flooded out the Vietnamese Ho Chi Minh Trail. Those of us who really study this believe these are the most dangerous programs that this world has ever seen.
Cloud seeding is one thing, and it's been proven for a long time. It's a fact that they use cloud seeding to try to flood the Ho Chi Minh Trail. But there's a big difference between cloud seeding and actively spraying chemicals like aluminum and barium over our head on a daily basis.
You know the statement, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence?
Absolutely.
This is obviously an extraordinary claim. Do you feel like you have an extraordinary amount of evidence to back up this claim?
I don't think it's an extraordinary claim.
Have you ever looked at the websites debunking your documentary?
Yeah.
One of them is saying that you guys tested sludge, not water, and that dirt is naturally 7% aluminum, and that's what you're finding.
Dirt does have naturally aluminum. It does have barium.
Well, what is sludge? It's
Maybe-
water,
maybe
water
from-
mixed with dirt. That's not evidence of anybody spraying anything.
You're buying
Being
into this,
tested.
which
Listen, man, they're
okay
not
with me.
buying. You're admitting. Do you admit that the ground itself contains levels of aluminum?
Of course. The ground was not mixed with water in
It
it.
says sludge.
What is sludge?
It's water mixed with ground. But
We
it's
can
just-
move on.
It seems like this has to be done again.
I will stand firm to this test. These sites have an agenda.
I mean, you have an agenda as well, right? Your agenda is to prove that it's a conspiracy. Their agenda is to prove that it's not.
He could be just paranoid, right?
I wouldn't say that.
Do you have enough evidence to make a clear and definitive statement?
They're talking about controlling weather. I think the debate is over.
I'm not buying what Michael Murphy's selling. I'm even more skeptical now. I don't think he knows enough about the weather to be talking about this, so I'm going to talk to a guy who does. His name is Scott Stevens. He's a meteorologist, and he is a chemtrail believer. First of all, man, thank you very much for doing this. Really appreciate it, and thanks for sharing whatever information you know about this. Now, as a meteorologist, what have you seen that's led you to believe that there's been some changes in the environment?
I first began to get the inkling that there was something up in the 90s. Because, Joe, forecasting weather is not that difficult. We've got Ophelia, which continues to intensify just off the east coast of Florida, and that's the big concern. There were storms that were not behaving as they should. Time after time, the guys in D.C. were issuing what they termed a low-confidence forecast. And I'm like, but until we see it, we know how big it is, we know how much water is there. Why is it a low-confidence forecast? So that was something that was in the back of my head. And in the meantime, I was always an alternative media kind of guy. Being in mainstream, I knew how much news was not delivered.
So you have some videos to show me? You have
I've got
some...
pictures of odd cloud formations, and honestly, Joe, I probably would still be going, what's going on, if I hadn't set up time-lapse cameras.
Okay, beautiful. Let's check this stuff out. Let's go downstairs and check it out.
And this is a time-lapse that I captured a couple of years ago that should make it very clear to people kind of what these planes are doing. That's one trail. Boom, there's two, here's three, and another will come up and hit that center point like that.
So when you see these crisscross patterns across the sky, what do you believe is happening?
See this square in the clouds with the ice crystals weeping off of this. So something is coming this way, and it is this square void.
But isn't that normal for clouds? Like random weird patterns?
But they're not random. The clouds are supposed to be round. Well, look at this square cloud out here over Billings, Montana. And here's a void. Exactly matches the shape and orientation of this cloud. That shouldn't happen. And this happens frequently.
You believe that there's some sort of technology that's controlling the weather?
Sure, they want to claim climate change or carbon dioxide, but that doesn't make sense. It just doesn't wash. So there has to be some other delta, some other data, some other change that they're not considering. And in my opinion, it's zombie storms. Seriously.
Are the world's governments manipulating the weather and creating huge zombie freak storms that come out of nowhere? Well, that is what meteorologist Scott Stevens believes. As a meteorologist, you believe that there's some sort of technology that's controlling the weather?
Yeah, but we're having so many events that are beyond what is normal. Zombie storms are those things that just, say, rise up out of nowhere and that are these beasts. And in my opinion, it's global weather engineering, geoengineering, and it's been underway for every bit of 30 years. And that would explain why we have these droughts that are historic, why we have biblical floods in Australia.
So you firmly believe in this
What I didn't know for the longest time is who is doing it to who. Russians against us against Chinese. You know, what is going on? And then I just kind of settled back that part of keeping the economic system going is consumption at higher prices.
I saw you had Nibiru on your desktop.
It exists.
Nibiru exists.
They're a benevolent race.
Nibiru. Ah, if you've never heard of it, Nibiru is supposedly a planet. On Nibiru live these aliens called the Anunnaki. And the story goes that they actually created human beings. If you're willing to believe that giant aliens from another planet created people, I guess chemtrails aren't such a big stretch after all.
That's pretty nutty stuff, right?
So is communication via wireless.
It is.
We are incredible beings, Joe. Incredible.
What can we do that we don't know about?
What can't we do? We've been kept from knowing that there are people from the stars. Once they're aware of this, people are going to then ask, what else do I need to know about? What else is there out there that they have not been forthright about? And that, I believe, is HARP.
Really?
Seriously. HARP stands for High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program.
Uh-oh, here we go. HARP. Every conspiracy theorist's ears just got a little bit bigger. For those of you who don't know what HARP is, it's a top-secret military installation that some believe is being used to weaponize the weather.
Do you feel like HARP has anything to do with these weather modifications?
Just like if you're going to build a house, you don't use one tool. So I think there are multiple tools, and HARP is one of them. Whether it's the primary one or not, I don't know.
The strange weather patterns, the zombie storms. Even though it's clear that something's going on, I'm not buying that chemtrails are causing all these things. I'm going to talk to a man next. His name is Mick West, and he runs a debunking website where he clearly and scientifically analyzes all of the problems with the conspiracy theories behind chemtrails. Well, hello, Mick. Thanks for taking the time to educate us.
Yep.
Now, how did you get involved in this debunking of chemtrails?
I've always been interested in debunking stuff, and I thought, oh, well, this sounds like a fairly straightforward thing to debunk.
Right.
It's like the gateway drug of conspiracy theories. It's easy to get sucked into.
What a great way to describe it. Are chemtrails real?
No, it's impossible to make a mile-wide trail by spraying powder. All that happens when a plane flies through the air is that it triggers a cloud. It's not actually really making a cloud. If the humidity is just below the level where you would get a cloud normally, then a plane flies along and it just kind of bumps up the humidity just up to 100%. The cloud forms. Because it freezes, it hangs around for a long time. The cloud was ready to happen anyway. Yeah, and people point to clouds like this. So this is a picture that's 100 years old. Here's another one.
So these clouds have always existed. Do you think that it is possible that someone, for some reason, is spraying anything in the air?
Obviously, it's possible to spray things out of planes, but as the military doing it secretly, we're very, very hard because the planes are visible. You will be able to take high-resolution photographs of the planes and see if they were spraying anything.
This doesn't necessarily remove the possibility that the government or some nefarious group has sprayed something in the sky before. And there's most certainly evidence of cloud seeding.
Well, cloud seeding's been going on since the 50s.
Right.
Contrails that they call chemtrails appear in a clear blue sky, which is completely different from cloud seeding.
What are your thoughts on weather manipulation in the first place? What are your thoughts on, like, HARP?
Well, there's really wild speculation about what HARP could actually do. Like it could, create earthquakes and change the weather. But that's just basically wild speculation. Just because there's HARP patterns that say, you can cause earthquakes, it doesn't mean anything.
The fears of HARP, you feel, are just based on ignorance.
Yeah.
Mick West put the last nail in the chemtrail coffin for me. But although he doesn't believe that HARP can be used to manipulate the weather, some very intelligent people have been studying this technology for decades, and they believe that there are far more sinister applications for this technology than are being reported. I'm going to go talk to one of them right now. His name is Nick Begich. He is an Alaska native, and he's been studying HARP for over 2 decades and writing books about the subjects. Some of the things that he has to say are very disturbing. Nick, how are you?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Tell me about HARP. It's an array.
A field of antennas. Right
How
now,
many are in the field?
180.
180.
180, they're about 60 feet tall, and then they have a cross dipole. That's about 45 feet by 45 feet. And these are located not just in Alaska. Now we have them across Canada, in Europe, and then the old transmitters in the former Soviet Union, and the Chinese talking about developing their own.
Should I be terrified?
Absolutely.